Please welcome Javier Soltero, VP and GM Workspace for Google, and Marina Seitún, Senior Manager, People Experience for Mercado Libre, for a discussion on fueling new ways of working with Google Workspace.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Buenos dias, buenas tardes, and everything in between. It's a real pleasure to speak with all of you as part of this high-tech leadership summit. Just a quick reminder that you can submit questions to us directly into the Socio platform so that we can address them at the end of our presentation. And with that out of the way, let's get started. So next slide, please. I'm Javier Soltero, Vice President and General Manager for Google Workspace. And although we're still in virtual mode here, I'm really excited about the conversation I'll be having shortly with Marina Seitún from Mercado Libre, one of our Google Workspace customers and the largest e-commerce platform and online payment network in Latin America. They're doing some really innovative things in the new world of work. Next slide. But before I bring Marina in, I'd like to talk a little bit about how Google Workspace is fueling new ways of working. As many of you know, Google Workspace brings together the apps loved by billions of people: Gmail, Google Chat, Calendar, Drive, Docs, Sheets, Meet, and many more into a single integrated workspace. Now more than ever, it feels like we need a new model for how to get things done, how to drive impact, and ultimately maintain our well-being, both individually and collectively. And we need to find new ways to keep people feeling connected in the hybrid world of work. It's certainly true for my teams at Google. A lot of us who were accustomed to working side by side in the office or catching up spontaneously before a meeting have spent almost 2 years collaborating from a distance, and it's really been full of challenges. But it's also brought new opportunities for rethinking how work actually happens. Next slide. We recently completed a global survey with the Economist Group to explore the state of hybrid work. We polled people in North America, Latin America, Europe, and Asia Pacific across all age groups and industries and organizational sizes. It confirmed a lot of what we already knew about how work has been totally transformed by the pandemic, but it also highlighted key challenges and opportunities for hybrid work as it evolves. It's clear from the survey that hybrid work is the major global model for knowledge workers and that it's here to stay. In our survey, 46% of people considered themselves hybrid workers, and another 23% said they'd be working remotely full-time. About 3/4 of respondents believe that hybrid or flexible work will be a standard practice within their organization in the coming 3 years. Considering that 70% of those same people said that they never routinely worked from home before the pandemic, we're really in the middle of a historic shift. Where people work and where they expect to work is obviously an important element of the hybrid work equation. But how people work is by far the more pressing area for exploration. When we look at the survey data, we see that the results touch on questions of productivity, well-being, collaboration, inclusion, and the uses and limits of technology. So what are we seeing in all this data? The first insight is that individual well-being is actually improving, and that's a great thing, but it's coming at a cost. Early on in the pandemic, productivity remained steady or even increased for many organizations, but levels of burnout also spiked as employees juggled things like caregiving and homeschooling with their day jobs. Based on the survey data, well-being has improved, no doubt, aided by things like students returning to school, including mine, in many regions, and fewer demands being made of working parents. The majority of people said that hybrid work, based on their own experiences, can have a positive impact on physical, mental, financial, and social well-being. But it appears that individual well-being is coming at the cost of organizational connection. Most people said they feel disconnected from their organization and coworkers, that limited networking opportunities negatively impact career growth, and limited social interactions with coworkers has had a negative impact on their mental health. To be sustainable, hybrid work models must address this sense of disconnection in real and tangible ways. We need to foster human connection across all the ways and places that people work. Another insight from the survey is that hybrid workers often rely on tools that were built for a bygone desktop era, when everyone sat in an office together. When asked about the most important conditions needed to achieve the long-term success of hybrid work models, the number one choice globally was new technologies that allow for time and location flexibility. Of course, it's gratifying for me to see this since Google Workspace is built on a cloud-native platform that empowers collaboration from anywhere on any device and securely. But the survey answer also highlights how much organizations have had to scramble to meet the demands of the pandemic. Some had to take legacy systems and make them work for a distributed workforce overnight, often leveraging less than ideal technologies like VPNs that introduce a lot of digital friction. From the survey, the top technology gaps for hybrid workers are unreliable internet access. If only all our Wi-Fi connections were actually hybrid ready, right? Reliance on slow or outdated tools, accessing and maintaining files in multiple places, and relying on too many applications in order to get the most basic work actually completed. And it's important to note that technology gaps of all kinds often affect communities of color disproportionately. On the technology front, we don't need more app and collaboration surfaces to strengthen the hybrid work experience. We need deeper, more meaningful connections in the tools and surfaces we already have. In many ways, Google Workspace was built for this hybrid moment. We've been empowering distributed teams with a cloud-native platform ever since we launched Gmail and Google Docs over 15 years ago. But the scale and scope of hybrid work is new, and it requires, ultimately, new ways of working. This year, to make hybrid work better and more sustainable, we've accelerated a series of innovations designed to foster human connection and flexible collaboration. Specifically, we've designed experiences that are more immersive, inclusive, and that keep people connected as they collaborate on a common goal or project. In May, at our Google I/O conference, we launched Smart Canvas, a new product experience that delivers the next evolution of collaboration for Google Workspace. It enhances the apps that hundreds of millions of people use every day, like Docs, Sheets, and Slides, to make them even more flexible, interactive, and intelligent. And it builds on the vision we established with Google Docs back in 2006 to not just create digital pieces of paper, but a real canvas for collaborative, linked content that's inspired by the web. So if a hybrid team is brainstorming together in a doc, Smart Canvas lets them use @mentions to view recommendations for related content, people, and meetings, all of it driven by AI. It also lets them automatically generate meeting note templates and easily insert checklists. And if they decide to pivot from their brainstorm into a live meeting, they'll soon be able to jump into our video conferencing solution, Google Meet, without leaving the dock where they've already been working together. Next slide, please. Virtual meetings are obviously a prime mover in the hybrid work landscape, and we've done a lot this year to make them better. But we've done also a lot of work to help prevent bad or unnecessary meetings by investing in other collaboration channels. One insight from our global survey is that people perceive virtual meetings as a double-edged sword. 68% said there were too many virtual meetings, but 72% said they improve inclusion and participation across their teams. It goes without saying that many of us over-indexed on virtual meetings as a way to bridge the distance between colleagues during the pandemic. Meetings, honestly, are not always the right form of collaboration, especially if there's been a rich breadcrumb trail of collaboration along the way. Recently, we launched Spaces as a central place to collaborate within Google Workspace. With Spaces, teams can share ideas, collaborate on documents, and manage tasks from a single place. And because all their work is preserved for future reference, team members can easily jump in and contribute at a time that works best for them, seeing a full history of the conversations, context, and content along the way. Using Spaces helps with overall well-being by giving people tools to better manage their time and attention. But obviously, the meeting has its own special place in the hybrid work world, and we've made a series of enhancements this year to make Google Meet more immersive and inclusive. With Meet and all across Google Workspace, we're especially interested in what we call collaboration equity, the ability for everyone to participate equally, no matter where they are, the device they're using, the language they speak, or their experience level. In order to boost collaboration equity in Google Meet, we've introduced the ability for people to customize their video tiles, including being able to turn off their own to help with meeting fatigue. And we've implemented things like automatic light adjustments and noise cancellation, which I hope you can hear because there's a vacuum cleaner right behind my door over there, to help ensure that everyone can be seen and heard. We're also currently rolling out real-time captions in Google Meet with live translations into multiple languages. Early next year, we're launching companion mode as a way to keep people connected during hybrid meetings. By letting people in the office share common features with their remote colleagues, like hand raising, Q&A, and polls, it ensures that there's one cohesive conversation that everyone can participate in. The other big area where we've thought about hybrid work is around well-being. With Google Workspace, we want to support well-being with tools that remove digital friction, foster human connection, and help people maintain work-life balance. The innovations I've outlined so far primarily empower groups of collaborators. But what about individuals? How do we give people the time and attention they need to focus on individual work and protect their work-life balance? In Google Workspace, we've recently introduced Focus Time, which lets people block out time on their calendars for work that requires uninterrupted focus. And we've launched a Time Insights dashboard in Google Calendar where employees can see how they're spending their time against their own goals and priorities. Tools like these are designed to help people deepen their own impact, regardless of where and how they work. Finally, this year, we've implemented a series of enhancements in Google Workspace to ensure that collaboration and communication always happen on a secure foundation. One of the major downsides of hybrid work is that workers have been increasingly targeted by phishing scams and other malicious attacks as they work away from the office. Hybrid work has only increased the attack surfaces available to bad actors. Google Workspace provides a born-in-the-cloud communication and collaboration experience accessed directly from any browser. Employees can now work securely from anywhere on any device. No email attachments are required, and organizations have the peace of mind knowing that Gmail blocks 99.9% of all spam, phishing, and malware from reaching users. Google Workspace operates on a zero trust security model that shifts the focus to individual users, enforcing access controls no matter where they are or the device that they're using, without having to resort to outdated VPN technology. And that security extends to employees bringing their own devices to work or using them from home. To further strengthen secure collaboration, this year we've also launched client-side encryption in Google Workspace, and Google just announced the Work Safer program, which offers customers an all-in-one security package across email, messaging, meetings, and documents. Obviously, technology can only go so far in bridging the hybrid work gaps. Culture and leadership also play a vital role as we rethink the norms around shared workspaces, whether they're physical or virtual. A hybrid first approach needs to be woven into your culture, from the way meetings are run to how feedback is shared. And we need to avoid proximity bias, especially as it affects employees from underrepresented groups. Will those who return to the office more often have advantages in relationship building and networking when compared to their less visible remote colleagues? And if so, how do we mitigate against that? Our survey also suggested that across all regions, managers need to learn new skills if they're going to help guide their hybrid teams to success and well-being. More than 70% of people said that the culture of trust between managers and employees needed improvement. As you all think about how your organizations will evolve, no doubt you'll be thinking about how to retrain your leadership styles to meet the hybrid moment. From what we're seeing at Google among our many customers and in our global survey, the biggest challenge and the biggest opportunity will be how to keep your hybrid employees connected and foster their well-being while also maintaining your company's unique culture. So with all this as context for the new world of work, I would like to bring in Marina Seitún, Senior Manager of People Experience for Mercado Libre, a customer we're very proud to have in the Google Workspace family. Welcome, Marina, and thank you so much for joining me.
Please, thank you, Javier, and the whole team for inviting us. For us, it's super important and great to share with you and with the whole audience our experience.
Yes. So look, before we jump into some of the questions about your experience with collaborative technologies and workspace at Mercado Libre, can you introduce yourself and share a little bit more about your mission and your role in bringing it to life?
Yep, sure. As you said on when you started your presentation, at Melly, we are the number one leaders in e-commerce and financial services within Latin America. We have presence in 18 countries and operations in 8 of them, and we are more than 30,000 employees right now. We have doubled our headcount within the last year. Our purpose is to democratize financial services and commerce within the whole region, impacting the lives of millions of people within Latin America. To achieve that, we definitely needed to work our teams as a network and to have them working in a very, very collaborative way. This was the only way to achieve sustainable business results and to maintain them throughout the year and throughout the last years. My role within this is to help all of the employees within Meli to strive and to have a significant experience working in three platforms, I would say, and you have mentioned a couple of them within your presentation. Within spaces, virtual or physical spaces, within the culture, and within technology.
Excellent. As you built out your team and role, generating input and buy-in from your stakeholders was surely critical. Can you tell us a little bit about how using Workspace helped you efficiently show the potential impact of your work and coordinate the necessary change management that had to happen at Nelly?
Yep. We started the area a couple of years ago, and one of the most important things that we have done, we started to measure critical, what we called critical or crucial moments for us. We started collecting data, real-time data via forms. We populated Google Sheets, obviously, and we created data that was sent to presentations that had the whole management and the whole leadership had access in real time. So we constructed stories with data. We made it clear that the engagement and therefore the business result was intimately associated with the experience that people were having within Meli. This was only done because we had a real-time connection of all the platforms we were using at real time.
Excellent. And I'm curious, as a people experience manager, what are some of the technology roadblocks that you might experience when it comes to efficiently and effectively collaborating with your team members and the various stakeholders you have across the company?
Well, I would say within the last two years, I think everyone within the audience and probably yourself, I would say the major roadblock today is desynchronization. If we have teams that are not working in a collaborative way and at the same time, and everyone's going through the same path, then we're gonna probably have a major problem at some point. So, for example, we can have a synchronic moment where, like a meeting, where we can elaborate a backbone of a presentation of a new project. But probably I will work at one time of the day, and probably tomorrow you will be spending a focused time on your calendar to work on it on whatever other moment. So this micro, I would say, like asynchronic spaces that everyone collects and that everyone is collaborating at the same time, yet at different moments within the day or week or month, makes it necessary and a roadblock if it does not happen. So definitely the whole Google Suite helps us to understand and to see this. I can see real time who's working where and what he or she is editing.
Excellent. And can you maybe give a little bit of an example of how Workspace has actually transformed the way that people are doing things? I mean, there's been a lot of changes happening around everyone's lives. And as you've adapted at Meli, like how have these tools actually, you mentioned, synchronous and asynchronous collaboration. Any other examples, I guess, of what has really what has really changed as a result, through the use of Workspace in this situation?
I think there are like a couple of examples I could bring. One that, at least for me, was a very cutting edge and different differentiator was that minutes today are attached to the same calendar invite. I can still recall my first jobs where I had to search my inbox. Probably maybe many of the audience don't yet know what it was to attach a minute to an email and have to search within it. To have the whole information on any project, it doesn't matter if I could or could not participate on a specific meeting, and yet have the whole information within just one Google Calendar, and I just need to recall that meeting or those people I was invited with. It's super important. That's a transformation in just a couple of clicks in a very, very, very user-centric design. Google could resolve tasks that took a major time when I had to search within folders or whatever. Another very, very clear feature that we are using right now is to understand when you're working at home or at the office. As you said, hybrid organizations, in this hybrid way of working that is new for everyone, and that everyone within the whole world is writing as we go on it. It's super important when I have to schedule a feedback to understand when that person's gonna be in the office is super differentiator. Why? It's not the same connection we can make if we are face to face than if we are remote. So there's specific spaces that probably will be on a face to face basis, and there probably are others that will be on a remote. So understanding which is the best day and the best moment for each one of those people that yet have individualities is super important.
Those are excellent examples. Thank you. In a way, what they seem to tie up with is this idea of managing expectations, right? Whether somebody is available or not, whether they're actually going to be attending a meeting in person or not. How do you recall information about this so that you can be prepared for a discussion, with the right set of assets? Taking it maybe a little bit further away from the technology side and more just from a cultural perspective, like Mercado Libre is a very diverse and global company. How do you ensure like an equitable experience for all employees, given this sort of distributed and remote work setup that you have?
We work with what we call 5 design premises. Everything that what we do, and these 3 frames that I spoke a couple of minutes ago, everything that we do needs to be mobile, needs to be scalable, needs to be real time, needs to be multi-language, and mainly needs to be cloud. I said 5 premises, and that impact, it doesn't matter who you are, where you are joining, Mali, in Mexico, in Brazil, even in China, even in Miami. It doesn't really matter who you are or where you're joining, just because we have roles and responsibilities within the security part and the administration, the admin console, then we can give anyone the possibility to access. And I see this as our our purpose on action. If we democratize technology, information, and environments, then we can definitely transform and democratize commerce and therefore also financial services.
That's great to hear, and it's been a very interesting journey, I think, between our 2 teams in working on this and learning actually from Mercado Libre's experience, as we have from so many other organizations around the world. Maybe the last question before we go to audience folks. So now more than ever, really, human connection and interaction are something we crave, right? I had recently my first experience in a work meeting that occurred in person in basically in 2 years. Our teams have been very intentional in sort of building that dynamic into your workspace experience. Is that actually coming through, right? Like is our attempt at using digital tools and actually some of the more things like the calendar capabilities, et cetera, is that coming through in terms of like strengthening the sense of connection that people feel? I'm sure you've hired a bunch of people through the course of the pandemic who've maybe never set foot in a Mercado Libre office, right? Be great to hear any examples of how Workspace has actually kind of provided or enabled human connection and deeper interaction in the face of this underlying distributed setup that you have.
Yep, sure. I can still recall. I don't know how many of you know, but in Latin America, when we had the lockdown, it was super long for a couple of months, and I still recall the first onboarding. We had 200 new joiners within the whole region, and we were all from day to night. We had to change everything within a couple of hours, just a couple of hours. I still recall that weekend. And we had 200 people on just one meet, just receiving information. Today, we can have breakout rooms. The social connection that a new joiner has with another new joiner, just because they can share this space and this small couple of minutes where you can tell me, hey, are you coming and what you're expecting and what will be your role. Imagine hiring, again, we doubled our headcount in 1 year in a pandemic year. So imagine it's crucial for every new joiner to have this possibility to really have a contact with someone. So for us, breakout rooms was super differential, and it made us and it helped us to really construct this confidence and this bonding within the teams, and no matter who you were and where you're sitting. And I would say another one are definitely backgrounds. You would say, hey, it's just a background. I still recall a Meli anniversary where we shared a couple of different backgrounds where you could connect with the IPO, with peak seasons, with different moments of Meli. I chose one that for me was super important. really transformed users that had to, that made purchases within the pandemic, where again we had a major lockdown, so you could not go out of your home, and Mercado Libre gave you in your home at your door maybe your, I don't know, birthday present that your mother sent, or your son or whoever.
Mhm.
So really changing those lives and connecting with it through a background, it was super important for us.
Those are both great examples, breakout rooms, backgrounds, and they are small but important ways to enable people to express themselves and also as you mentioned, feel more connected to the culture and mission of the organization they're a part of.
Yep.
Marina, thank you so much for sharing, your insights and experience. Personally, I'm grateful for the partnership with Meli, and I'm excited to see what lies ahead for your organization and ours, and hope to continue learning from all of you.
Yep,
Um,
definitely.
I'd love to open things now up for questions from people who might be watching the session, and we have a few minutes for that. So please chime in through the Socio platform as you've been doing in other sessions, and we'll take them as they come. Okay, first question came in. It says, what has been the biggest challenge in reimagining a cloud-based productivity product like Workspace during this period of time when distributed work is becoming the norm? I'd say, the one part that wasn't a challenge was the fact that we had a different point of view as a product. We had collaboration baked into everything we did from the very beginning. In fact, if anything, I remember having my first, customer advisory board meeting in probably July or August of last year, when we were meeting with maybe 20 customers of Google Workspace from companies around the world, most of whom obviously were customers of Workspace since before the pandemic hit. And the universal sentiment they shared was they were grateful to have actually adopted a product that had collaboration, a different approach to security, all these things sort of baked in. Uh, Prior to the shift in the pandemic, to them, the disruption caused by an almost instantaneous move from being in an office and working a certain way to being remote was actually far smoother. And I think, when you consider all of the different things you have to do, from like provisioning of devices to managing access to certain things across a broad range of roles, including actually something we didn't really talk about too much in my presentation, but remains a key part of our opportunity. The not just talking about hybrid work and the way it affects knowledge workers, but the effects of hybrid work on frontline workers and customer facing workers that don't have the option and flexibility to not be in the office or to not actually work from a very specific location. Um, all of those things kind of contributed to giving us a grounded sense that we had done the right set of things long before the pandemic was even a possibility. I think in terms of challenges, we wanted we got quickly anchored on three core tenets that drive everything we do. First, this idea that work or what you do is no longer defined by where it occurs, by the location that it takes place in, whether it's working or going to school or any number of things. Kind of through the course of the pandemic, we determined that it is now not only possible, but actually effective to be to run a government from people's houses, to deliver justice as we did with partnerships with government agencies throughout Latin America, like in Peru and other places, while the justice system was itself also distributed, that all these things were possible. The second tenet is this idea that time and attention remain the most precious resource for people and for organizations. And so therefore the better you are at managing that, the more effective you will be. And third, that this notion of human connection, which we talked about a little bit, and Marina shared as well from the perspective of Mercado Libre, is the foundational, essential ingredient in achieving anything difficult and worthwhile in humanity, whether it's teaching a child how to read and or launching spacecraft into orbit or delivering a present for your niece or nephew in some other part of the world. And so as a result, I'd say maybe that human connection piece remains the most difficult to achieve. It's not necessarily something digital tools are designed to do. And humans tend to over pivot to like, well, let's always be on video for all things at all times. And that's exhausting. And so building products that actually make people not just capable of connecting, but connecting at the right way for the right reasons, I think remains the biggest challenge and ultimately the biggest opportunity. So thank you for the question. Okay, next one. Do you believe that hybrid has shifted company cultures? Google likely had a culture to be ready, but it is different to be ready and actually doing hybrid. Has this shifted culture, leadership models, etc.? Also, similar question to Mercado Libre. Fascinating question. Thank you for that. Um, let's see. In a way, Google, despite having built its culture around the unique capabilities of our communication and collaboration products around Google Workspace itself, uh, was very, very focused on a certain kind of employee experience and a deep and rich investment in amazing facilities and really a comprehensive approach to how employees join the company, how they get familiarized with the unique elements and approaches of the company, the terminology of the company, the cultural norms, etc. And when the shift to the pandemic occurred, I can say that for one, we were actually fortunate enough to be prepared, not just because we had technology that was going to help us, but the team, the working group at Google who was assessing the pace and severity of the pandemic as it was developing, especially in the early part of last year, had the foresight to begin a process of what I think we refer to as business continuity analysis or something like that, to begin assessing the resilience and durability of all of what we were doing in preparation for what seemed at the time as the possibility that we might face a very significant disruption to our operations and to our ability to be physically present in our offices. And it was as a result of that, I think, that we were actually able to send our employees home in at least certainly in California and in parts of the United States before the pandemic lockdowns and shelter in place orders actually took place. And while there was plenty of things that we didn't anticipate that we had to quickly react to, like for example, in my case, I had a bunch of a number of executive positions that were added, people who came on board to lead this team that is ultimately building products to help the entire world endure this challenging moment. These people were also joining the team and have never I only met them literally like a month and a half ago. So there are certain things that you just simply can't anticipate. And maybe last thing before giving the Mercado Libre perspective, we came to understand that within companies' culture, there is effectively a social contract that governs. It's not written down in a formal contract way. It's just it's a collection of norms and approaches that people take to engaging with each other, tackling difficult problems, managing change, etc. How they approach meeting etiquette, all these things. Examples include, for me, I joined Google in October of 2019, so I had a very small window of visibility into what it was like to actually be a Google employee in the traditional pre-pandemic sense. I got the hat, right, like the Noodler hat that maybe some of you have seen with the propeller that we give to every employee, vice presidents, executives, new hires from college, and everybody in between. But this idea that the social contract at Google included, for example, that minutes were 30 minutes long, and every other company that I had worked at had just for maybe anthropological reasons has accepted that meeting default lengths are 60 minutes or maybe longer, which seems a little terrifying. So that was my first shock of like, wow, it's 30 minutes. And at least before we all shifted to remote work, I was happy about it. Like within 30 minutes, you can have a few minutes of like banter and kind of a social interaction and all the typical things that make going to work not just a series of transactional moments. And then you still have time to actually get stuff done, and then you'd be done and move on. And so there were a whole range of those types of things that include that are actually important parts of how companies can more effectively move towards hybrid. Google seems to understand its social contract relatively well and has put great pains to adapt it, certainly during the remote work period that we're in, and as we prepare hopefully for early next year returning to office and embracing hybrid, the necessary adjustments for that. But it is a process. You can't actually package that up as a standard, here's the recipe. We can offer guidance and certainly use forums like this to share examples. But it's important to note that that is a very specific, almost soul-searching exercise for an organization and its leadership to do. Marina, I'm curious, how would you respond to this? From Mercado Libre's experience, how did your culture adjust to this?
Yep, I agree with. I think it's almost the vast majority of what you just said. Definitely, I think at least at Mercado Libre, but I'm guessing for Google it's the same. As we are native technology companies, we have already our culture structured in a way that is conceived from a different point of view. So that from the bottom line, it gave us a different page to start writing. What would hybrid mean for us, at least for Mercado Libre? So culture wasn't didn't change. There was nothing within the culture that should change, and even more, I would say that it just pushed to be sure that our culture was the one we really needed, and I think our culture was enabler for Mercado Libre to double headcount in 1 year, to double our revenues, to have the business results we had. But what we needed to do, and I think it's, as you called it, the social contract, we did help a lot our leaders. For example, we did need to accompany every leader, and all leaders have different maturity stages. So probably it's not a one size fit all. But hey, remember to have feedback sessions. Either doesn't matter, you're not on a one-to-one or on a face-to-face situation. You can still have feedback. Don't remember to do this. Or for example, what you call with what we call healthy meetings. We push the whole company to have breaks within one meeting and another. I still remember, and maybe many of you had the same transition from one to another within the first months of the pandemic. But we had one meeting after the another, after another, and if someone saw 10 minutes, then they tried to block that calendar, and it wasn't healthy enough for any, not for the one who received the invitation, and not for the other one who was sending it. So understanding which were the conducts that we needed to promote and to be aware of was a key. So what we did was to work with nudges and work with guidelines for leaders, and to give them, hey, these are a couple of things that you can do to work better with your teams in this way of working. And as you said, it was like trying to understand who was on the other side, and different people have different necessities. Maybe someone needed just a push within something on their home. Someone needed something, a feedback, hey, because they were isolated and they didn't have this recognition, so they just needed a recognition boost. So different people have different necessities. I think, as you said, Javier, it's not a one size fits all. And I think it's like trying to really understand what's your essence, what's your culture, and from there how to construct with the leaders.
You mentioned nudges, and that I think it's a great suggestion. One of the things that we actually do within my organization is we even call it, I think it's called Nudge Nation. We send manager communications to educate people and give them some guidance, because as you said, like there is a in the immediate shift to remote work, I think it was like like just a treading water, like, okay, well, we have to keep things moving and we're not sure how this is going to work. So it just kept feeling like, well, you have free time and you're really not walking from one room to another, so therefore you can probably just I don't know, yeah, you could book back to back, and you might and I still deal with this, right? Like you hang up on one meet call and join another, and 75% of the people are the same, right? And what's important is what's missing there, right? Like the fact that there isn't uh, there is no time in between. There's no physical activity for people. There's just sort of a content, like a continuous transactional way of moving in and out. That can be really detrimental, and also fails to capture something that's pretty essential. Most people don't consider when they look at the difference between physical workplace interactions and virtual ones. Most decisions are actually rarely made in the meeting. They're actually made right after the meeting or right before. It's the shoulders of a given scheduled time that are often unstructured and create the serendipitous moments where people are able to process the information that was just discussed and potentially come up with an idea that they then propose, et cetera. And in a hybrid world, it's important to consider the possibility that those are physically gathered will be able to take advantage of that. And those that are not there didn't even know that happened, right? They might just be clicking into the next meet call or whatever, which is part of the problem. And also, I think, part of the opportunity. And here's where, so technology can go to a certain degree in enabling those things to be captured, but the social contract of the company has to raise awareness about the possibility that in having a sidebar conversation after a meeting that included some people that are not physically present, you are explicitly not including those people, and they may not even be aware. You may be missing their perspective, et cetera. So those are and I mean, this also applies to performance management and the more high performing and driven a culture is, the harder it is to assess and manage the risk of people feeling like the only recourse they have is to just book 10 hours a day of their time to be in one meeting after another and just burn themselves out. Okay, next question. How have your thoughts on hybrid work models evolved as we emerge from the pandemic? Where, for example, where are large parts of the workforce or where large parts of the workforce that are on site need to work closely with large portions that are remote? What changes do you see down the road? Marina, maybe you can tackle this one. Oh, I'm sorry. Wait, we were going to do the schedule one. Never mind. I'm sorry. I'm getting this. The questions are falling out of order. My mistake. Let me answer this one quickly, and then we can go to the schedules one, because I do think that one is uniquely. I would love to hear your perspective. So on this question, it relates to what I was talking about, right? Like you have you have meeting equity challenges involving a mix of people that might be gathered physically in a room, who can see each other in 3 dimensions, feel each other's presence, maybe have whispered asides or whatever, interact with each other before and after the meeting is formally over. And then you have a portion of people of varying quantities who may be remote. And the remote group falls into 2 camps. One is remote individuals, and then the other is remote groups that are gathered together just in an office. I think a remote group to remote group, easier to manage. A remote group, an in-person group to like a bunch of let's say satellite or individual people that are remote, much harder. And that's where establishing, for example, in the case of Workspace, using our Spaces capability to create durable places for conversations to occur both in the meeting and before and after the meeting, and capture files, other types of documents that may be relevant to the topic of discussion, become really important, because they exist. When the meeting is over, it's ephemeral. Everything about it just kind of disappears. It becomes a record in your calendar. So the more proactive you are in using capabilities outside of the meeting to create a sense of durability and a sense of a container for the collaboration and communication and decision making that has to occur, the better you'll be. And then I'll also highlight something Marina shared with their experience at Mercado Libre, which is the usage of breakout rooms. So within a given meeting, your ability to enable smaller groups of people to have, regardless of where they happen to be, breakout discussions that are still sort of associated with a meeting that's otherwise taking place within a group, gives you actually newfound flexibility. You can do that in physical space, but it's a little bit harder and more awkward. Meaning, imagine you're all physically in a room and then two people just like, hang on a second, we need to get up and talk about this. Or, yeah, you just hide, right? And that doesn't really work. So virtual does kind of, maybe the main point to emphasize here is the goal isn't to just try to recreate every in-person office-based interaction digitally. That's a mistake. And that's actually what we tried to do at the beginning of the pandemic. And it worked to a point before it started burning people up. I think the important thing now is to actually embrace the opportunity and apply it. So with that, maybe we can shift to the next question from the audience, which is, what are your work from home schedules like? Any tips or changes that you made that have had a significant improvement in Mercado Libre?
That's a good one, and I'm gonna answer this from a personal side. I think this again, it's not one size fits all. I have a 2-year-old daughter, so it demands me, or I don't know if it demands me. I personally wanted to spend time and quality time with her. So the first thing I needed to change was not to assume that someone was gonna think that I'm gonna have lunch at 1 o'clock. In Argentina, we do lunch at 1 o'clock usually. So I started to block those times that I really wanted to do something else. It's kind of focus time, but it is quality time, I would say, with my daughter. And the other thing I needed to deconstruct myself is office is not, or working hours, it's not 9 to 6 or whatever hour you have. Maybe on my case and my personal case, I work on my morning. I in the afternoon I take a break to lunch and to be with my daughter, and probably many days a week I block a couple of hours before the end of the day so I can be with my daughter. Usually, maybe I keep on working at late night, maybe at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. So understanding that first, not one day is exactly the same to the other one, and that probably today I had this meeting, and today I'm on the office, as you can notice. I'm gonna go home right now from here, and I'm gonna have a couple of meetings later on my schedule. So being owner of your own agenda, I would say that that's the best that worked for me, and not to expect the whole company or my team or whoever to understand my schedule. My schedule is only mine, and I'm the protagonist, and I'm the owner of sparing those times I need for different things. For example, and something we used Google Meet when we started the pandemic, we noticed that people needed this social connection. So we started to give, instead of streaming classes of yoga or functional gym, we started to create Google Meet classes. Why? Because people could speak with themselves. So, hey, this is difficult. This exercise is difficult, or what are you doing next, or whatever. So those spaces, and to really block yourself to do that, were things that helped me. And again, also blocking spaces to do things that I like, such as, for example, I block a space in my agenda. I do singing classes. For me, that's health, well-being, and well-being for myself. Probably that same day I'm gonna work at night because I still need to do something for a presentation, for a project, or whatever. So I would say, like, be owners of your agenda.
Excellent example. And I want to echo something we touched on a little bit ago, that relates to the social contract idea. You mentioned in your example the difference in time in which people in Argentina have lunch. We could talk a little bit about how late they tend to have dinner, which is I've always found very interesting, and how long dinners actually last. But you want to own your agenda and be responsible and feel empowered about how you set expectations with the rest of a group around when you are or are not available. but I think it's worthwhile recognizing that across industries, and maybe different in Mercado Libre and Google and other companies like ours, but in more older, perhaps different kinds of companies, is not as not the case. That social contract isn't set up necessarily for individual empowerment, and in a way, people, especially those of us with a different ethnicity and different cultural backgrounds, are afraid to actually take a position that says, actually, it turns out that between the geography that I'm at and the culture that I'm a part of, we actually observe these traditions, or our schedule looks this way. And if everyone else isn't bought into that there may be a reluctance from individual employees to take advantage of tooling like what Google Workspace even provides to express that. And so this is where leaders have to take an active hand in acknowledging that part of embracing hybrid really requires you embrace it. It injects a bunch of new responsibilities. Work still has to be done. Employees still have to perform. Revenue has to grow. Products have to ship. All the things, but it's not everyone has to kind of move towards that. Whether you take advantage of it or not, it has to be treated as an equity issue. Because if it's not, then people are going to be really reticent to embrace it, and they're going to get burned out, and they're going to be unhappy, and they're likely going to leave. Is, I guess, and we're seeing that in some industries that are not embracing the reality of the moment. So I think this is a really there's no technology can solve that. What only leadership can actually do, and companies' own individual expression of culture can cover. Okay. Next question. As it was mentioned, having now people be able to work from anywhere using any device, what were the challenges on maintaining data classification, data retention, identity lifecycle, meaning onboarding of new employees, granting access, disabling users, etc., and other day-to-day activities performed by employees and users? I can share a little bit about what we observed at Google and across our customers, and then Marina, if you have a perspective on this, I'll welcome your thoughts as well. But so first of all, thank goodness for FedEx, DHL, the postal services of the planet, and the logistics companies of the world for being able to still give us a channel to ship physical goods to employees, in particular when it comes to onboarding knowledge workers with corporate issued devices or security keys or any number of other things that they need, including actually for those who joined Google during the pandemic and were not able to attend our formal in-person orientation. They all got shipped the propeller hats. That having a channel to be able to deliver the necessary equipment is a crucial and essential part of this. I think the next question is exactly what do you have to provision and deliver? Because in some cases we have many companies who enabled use of personal devices, and whether they're mobile devices or personal tablets and computers of different types for this purpose, and embraced Workspace's uniquely zero trust approach to do all of the remote provisioning and security enablement for those endpoints without requiring any kind of additional custom software to be installed on the device. As long as a computer was running a compliant browser or one of our apps, so let's say it's Chrome, and that those users had been appropriately provisioned via our identity system centrally, the user would be given a very small, simple set of instructions, perhaps having the only shipped thing to them other than cool hats be one of our Titan security keys, right? A physical hardware token to ensure that user is who they say they are, and they have a two-factor authentication. From that point forward, everything else is remotely managed. That's absolutely crucial, because in the model where models of collaboration and communication that are based on physical presence in an office assume that there are a variety of routes through which information could be shared, which included having information be locally stored on personal or otherwise corporate managed devices, and that information that's locally stored can get lost, can get phished, can get misused, etc. And in our case, really nothing lands on the device, especially given the administrator's ability to determine that. I think data classification became an important part of the solution, and it's something we have recently introduced in Drive through the concept of labels. So for administrators to centrally define a set of classification heuristics, whether they are things like confidential, secret, and top secret, which for those in the Defense Department industry, there is a difference between secret and top secret, except nobody can actually tell you what it is, because it too is secret. It's a little bit of nerdy security clearance humor for those in the audience. Anyway, that they can define labels that may even be specific to the business or industry, and that those labels go along with a certain level of access and restrictions. And as long as data is appropriately classified with those labels, then users don't have anything to do. They just act as they normally would, and the guardrails for security are present. The task of granting access and disabling users, etc., I think the place that becomes a complex and difficult thing involves the degree to which you have multiple systems of record that may or may not be fully integrated and synchronized. And so how many places do you have to go to disable an account, right? Or to remove or grant access is largely a function of the identity system that you might be using at your company and how well or poorly it integrates into other system of records, whether it's an HR management system or any other system that consumes identity. And again, with Workspace, we have the ability to both be the system of record or be a consumer and an appropriate partner system to another system of record upstream, whether it's something like Active Directory or Okta or any solution like that. Marina, any perspective on this from Mercado Libre's experience? I know this is it could be a very IT-ish sort of nerdy topic, but maybe even from your perspective as in your role.
Yep, definitely. And yes, I do work at the people department, yet I work with cybersecurity for the unexpected reasons of life. I think it's just as you said, and I think it brings me back to our premises that everything needs to be scalable and scalable mobile and those. But when we mean scalable, it means I can double my headcount and I can rest that security is addressed. Why? Because we have our whole interactions between Active Directory, as you said, between success factors, our ATS, and Google. So everything is just connected. We can really, and for example, we have even more, we have WhatsApp connected. We create our credentials and we send them to someone who's joining. So he or she is not yet part of Mercado Libre just because we can send the information because we received a call via API from the ATS that we needed to send the Google credentials to someone via WhatsApp. So I think when we, at least at Mercado Libre, when we say scalable, we mean secure, and we mean secure and connected with the whole tech stack. So we cannot see as isolated things. Google Suite is definitely not an isolated part from the rest of technologies that we use. So I endorse what you were saying.
Excellent. And I think with that, I think we are at time. I want to say thank you, muito obrigado, muchas gracias, and everything in between. To all of you in attendance, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you, Marina, for joining me and sharing so much of your experience. And thank you again for your partnership. As it is the season, I hope everyone has a fantastic end of the calendar year and a wonderful holiday time with friends and family, and stay safe and enjoy the rest of the Fall Leadership Summit.